Who's still friend? It's me. I think I'm my biggest hater.
In 2020, a 30-year-old father of two in the Bronx had an idea. While struggling to establish a music career, Jay Tips took inspiration from the streetwear brands he loved and committed fully to a vision for a personal brand focused on apparel and merch.
I remember being in high school, seeing like Pharrell, Nigo, this is BAPE, this is BBC. He used to just be like, I know that this is something that's so special that if I had it or I can imitate it in some way, that I'm cool too.
After building an organic following for his designs, Jay stepped out of his comfort zone and started knocking on the doors of people who could help him scale his vision.
Instead of just being creative, how about you lean into it and try to take some meetings and see who got 15 minutes of their day, 30 minutes, seeing what you can really accomplish.
That hustle led to a partnership with a somewhat obscure running shoe brand, Saucony, as well as a series of beloved footwear collaborations that captured the imagination of the sneaker community.
I told them at the end of our first meeting that, you give me an opportunity and we'll win Shoe of the Year.
But despite critical and cultural acclaim, the harsh economics of streetwear and the crowded footwear landscape mean that Jay still cannot take success for granted.
Do you feel a certain pressure to outdo yourself with each release?
Yeah, if a project doesn't go well, do people feel like it was a bubble?
At ComplexCon last year, during the Sneaker of the Year panel, you exited the room after receiving the 10th slot on the lineup.
To me, and it's tough because I haven't spoke about this.
And it all started with one idea.
Right, we good to go? Jay Tips, welcome to Idea Generation.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. I know that your 12th grade English teacher had some words for you, and your mother also tried to dissuade you from pursuing your passions in sneakers. What is the role that adversity plays in your motivation?
I feel like, what is an entrepreneur without adversity? I think I've always knew something was different. I always knew that things were ticking for me and motivate me differently than everybody else. How do you convince your grandma who doesn't have social media, or your mom that doesn't really see publications the same way you do in a value system, where it's like it's hard to convince someone that you're putting all this money because you're hoping Complex answers an email or somebody posts it. So I just think that being at such a young age where I knew that my future was a creative one, trying to articulate that. I think as I've gotten older, I forgive people a little bit because it is an anomaly. It is a very, very hard thing to even convince yourself that you're doing. But I feel like I live with adversity every day.
You mentioned the people around you not necessarily having the vision for the world that you were trying to be in. And, it's often said that representation is very important. Who were the people that you were looking at growing up in your vicinity that sort of opened your eyes to the possibility of a career in the creative arts?
I remember being in high school and you're seeing like magazine cutouts. So you're seeing like Pharrell, you're seeing Nigo, and you at that time you associate an entire brand with a person. Like you calling a person by their name. Like this is BAPE, this is BBC, or even at that time like Fabulous the rapper had a clothing brand called Rich Young, and he used to just look at it like Swiss Beats and Kid Robot. Like you used to just be like, I know that this is something that's so special that if I had it or I can imitate it in some way, that I'm cool too. I think it's interesting in the career path that I'm in to suffer from like social anxiety, but I used to feel like if I was either participating in the coolest things or wearing the coolest things, then that was like my superhero cape.
When you say suffering from social anxiety, tell me about that.
Just growing up, If it was basketball tryouts, if it was school dance, if it was, going to the park at a certain time, I would find excuses in myself just to not be around people. Just feeling like my social battery was just drained from even just small interactions.
Has that changed as you've gotten older?
I've built it. I feel like I've built my universe of comfort where I'm around my friends and my family and people that make me feel comfortable. But I think to go grab a drink at a bar and read the room and navigate and stuff, I'm still trying to work myself to get there. My biggest advantage as a creative is I'm telling my story. I feel like my ideas come from my childhood. I try to just talk back to that kid that used to just want to be older, wanted to create, but just was very, very low on resources and just didn't know how to do things. So I just try to kind of channel through him.
You mentioned Pharrell and BAPE and BBC, and I know in the past you have mentioned BBC as a brand that you idolized. And from the outside looking in, I can see things about their color palettes and certain aesthetics that you have sort of incorporated into the stuff that you're doing. What were the feelings that brand gave you, and where do you see that lineage playing out in what you design?
Yeah. What BBC did to me is hard for me to explain. It felt like it belonged to me. Like I felt like I was in the music video. I felt like I was on the red carpet at the award show. I felt like, I wanted to throw up Star Trek. It sent something to my bloodstream, to be honest, just to be able to afford it. I was working at Footlocker at the time, making $6.38 an hour. And I would have a 30-minute break and figure out how to get from Herald Square, Manhattan, the D train to Broadway Lafayette, get to West Broadway, get to a store, buy something just to get back to work in 30 minutes. Like it felt like it was the most special thing in the world to me. But I also think that your subconscious kind of feeds off of the things that motivate you, and it starts to become you. So I do think that like my love for Billionaire Boys Club is why like I design in certain shapes and design in certain colors and large logos and across the chest and stuff. Where some brands, you could tell where the box logo comes from. You could tell where like the aesthetic comes from. It felt more than a garment to me, and I think that's what I try to design with that intention. Where, of course, people are buying my shoes or buying my hats or buying my clothes, but it's more than a garment to them. It means something to them.
Speaking of the time that you worked at Footlocker doing retail, and I've talked to a lot of designers on this show, whether it's Mike Amiri, or Tremaine, Angelo, all of them cut their teeth in retail. What were the most important things that you learned on that sales floor?
The most important thing I learned on the Footlocker sales floor is customer service. And it's not like generic, well, the customer is always right. It was just, you got to read people. You got to know. You got to think outside yourself. And I think even being a brand, sometimes you gotta know that I would love to wear this and I would love to make this, but you're not making just clothes for you, you're making clothes for them. So just constantly having to turn over a sale or turn over a customer. Like you can have a great customer and you can have a bad customer, and you can have an in-between, and then you got to do some convincing, and then that's just 1 hour of work.
I know while you were working at Footlocker, you were also cutting your teeth as a musician. Yeah. And it seems interesting to me, you talk about dealing with social anxiety and not necessarily feeling comfortable putting yourself out there in these spaces. Meanwhile, you're pursuing a career as a performer, literally on stage in front of hundreds of people, South by Southwest and stuff like that. How did you reconcile those things in your mind?
That's a very interesting question. Where I became a public speaker was I remember doing assemblies in like middle school and elementary school where they would always tell you, look at the clock, don't look in anybody's eyes, look in the clock. So I feel like I would always learn how to speak in front of people better than maybe I could have a conversation with you, because I would always learn to kind of focus somewhere, and that's where you need to focus. So it kind of makes the room feel empty and it feels like you're just there by yourself. I started making music because I would just, it's either go home or go with your friends to the studio where they're going to be in a, makeshift studio, whether it's a closet literally maybe a plastic bag over a microphone, and we just having a good time. And it was like, you know what? You can go home or you can write a verse and you can participate. So just to kind of stay around my friends for a few more hours, I would write a verse, and then I'll go back to the anxiety part. When you go to studios, a lot of times you locked in a closet or you locked in a booth by yourself. So I think that I would kind of be able to convey emotions or the way I was feeling through my lyrics and be vulnerable, because technically, even if people's on the other side of the wall, nobody's looking at me do this.
You've said in previous interviews that, during that early stage of making music, in retrospect, you weren't necessarily that good. What is the role that perseverance has played in sort of sculpting your professional life?
Just how to be good, how to be better, how to learn. Each time I would put music out, whether it would be a good song, bad song, indifferent, whether it's not for you, it was amazing. It was how are you going to be able to turn it over and figure it out? How do you package it? How do you just keep going? And I feel like just that repetition is parallel to anything I'm doing now.
You put out 8 projects between 2013, 2014, and 2021. And since then, you've put out almost a dozen sneakers.
Yeah.
What were the things that you learned during that period that you now apply to how you think about the J Tips empire?
The turnover. Each song on the album has a different theme, different beat, different structure, different 16-bar cadence going into an 8-bar hook, going into a bridge. That's why I would always respect my path of whether it turned out the way I wanted it to go or not. It was just how you're able to get up the next day and do it again. No matter what the results were, you got to get up and you got to do it again. And I think that I take that into the work. I think it's very unique, and I don't take it for granted that I'm able to have a campaign 3 months ago and then another one that's a completely different idea, and it's no hangover regardless if the media is still talking about it and people still wearing it through the streets. Like, let's turn it over, because you got to go hit after hit. We got to be Taylor Swift out here. I've learned to pivot when you feel like you're knocking at a door too long. You just gotta kind of learn when it's time to just move on to just something else. People always tell you, like, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is insanity. So I just learned, maybe try something else. Maybe try to add attention to detail. Instead of maybe it's not the music, maybe it's a strategy, maybe it's the promotion, maybe it's the merch, maybe it's something. And look, it was the merch.
In that moment of sort of transition in your career, we collectively experienced a global pandemic. Did that impact how you were thinking about what you were going to do with your life?
Yeah. The pandemic affected me because my kids, I while their mom works, I'm an entrepreneur. So I hold the brunt of just day to day. So just being able to, work that schedule out and be able to make sure that, she can do what she has to do and I can do what I have to do. During the pandemic, nobody was working. So what I seen at that point was I just seen more opportunity for me to maybe work a little bit more and me to kind of work on my craft more late nights and do things and stuff and work on more social posts. And to be honest, I think that work ethic that people kind of see from me now, being able to put out different products or pictures or images or T-shirts every single week during the pandemic, from I think May 2020 to maybe January of 2022, we put out a different product every week, whether it was a sock, whether it was a pin, whether it was a hat, whether it was a shirt. Every single week, I was just showing people that I can do it.
As you make that transition out of music into apparel and then into sneakers, what was the sort of catalyst that got you focused on that shift?
To me, it was adversity. To me, in music, and some people may agree, some people may not agree, but the hard work doesn't always get rewarded in music. Sometimes music does have a little luck. It does have a little bit of right place, right time. It does have a lot of who's favored, who's not favored, your situation. I just seen that I was telling my friends over dinner, I was like, you know what, I think I already have the background. I'm already consulting with brands. We're already doing focus groups. We're already like going to meetings and giving people hoodies and T-shirts and doing pens. Maybe I should focus on it a little bit more, and I should lean more into it. And I just think from that point on, I was like, you know what? Instead of just being creative or popping up on the sneakers app for a custom or bespoke that I made, how about you lean into it and try to take some meetings and see who got some 15 minutes of their day, 30 minutes, seeing what you can really accomplish. And I think I learned so much in that process that I just continued to go.
How many no's did you have to hear before you heard a yes?
That's interesting because people don't tell you no. They just fade away.
That's a very good point.
Kind of fade. It's a whole bunch of misdirection. It's a whole bunch of pointing fingers. It's a whole bunch of, we'll table this. We'll get back to this. We'll see. There was many conversations with many people who, maybe they don't make decisions. Maybe, I think that's something from the outside that you feel like everybody can just walk you into the door and into the wonderland, but maybe certain people did make decisions and they thought you were a good kid, but brand partnerships come from a different sector and different business model and budgets and quarterly things where you heard a lot of hesitation, but I do think that, like we spoke about a little earlier, like sometimes you keep knocking at the same door, whereas the door next to you that's open already.
Did you have a timeline for how long you were going to invest into this before, moving on to whatever the next thing might be?
No, I didn't have a timeline because I think at that point I had already invested my life. I was already like trying to figure out how to live work as a brand owner, trying to manage staff, payroll, trying to manage bills, trying to deal with net 30s, 60s, 90s. And we're also in a pandemic where like sometimes you're working on projects and even the companies can't pay because legal's out of office, and trying to get your landlord to understand certain things. And I had already invested everything. I've invested blood, sweat, and tears into everything, and I felt like I was going to have the biggest shoe in the world, but I was having to move out of my warehouse and having to explain to my family why, you can be all over the internet for shoe of the year, but, you need another few weeks to pay something. And I just think it was, and as long as I'm here, I got the time. I think that, because I think I invested everything into it already.
Beyond the design, I think if people were to credit your success, it would be to community. Mm-hmm. What is the thing that sneaker brands and other sneaker collaborators get wrong about how to create community?
I think what a lot of people get wrong is I think they look for the credit first. They want people to tell them, I see you. They want the recognition. They want the accolades. But I think you don't really, and maybe that's highlight culture. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's just people want the recognition. They want the total likes amount before they realize how you build towards it. But I just think that's the one thing that I've always felt. I felt that it was always going to come from my peers, and it was going to feel more authentic than it was going to feel from a write-up, or it's going to feel from maybe even just someone stopping me in Soho and giving me a compliment on my outfit or project. It would mean more to me if, I seen all my friends wearing it, or we can all hang out and we could just chat and we can just live in our world. And I just felt like I took that and I tried to continue to make my customers family. Personally responding to emails, it goes a long way. The Instagram DMs goes a long way, and it's organic. It's not just me just feeling like I'm playing a role. I feel like I do appreciate your money and your time and your effort and your support, because I feel like it's still earned, and I remember how long it took to get here.
You talked about all of the conversations that you had in Portland and various other places that ultimately didn't end up yielding much. Yeah. What was different about the conversation with Saucony, and what was that feeling like when you finally knocked that domino over? Someone
that I was having meetings with at Nike, there was like a big layoff that happened during the pandemic. So he just pretty much was like, I can't help you any further, but I do know someone that can talk to that, he used to work here, but he's at Saucony now. So they want to talk to you. They see what you're doing with hats. They see you traveling during the pandemic and doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff, but you're activating, you're building community. We got on the call, and right before the call ended, they said, we know we're not the coolest brand in the world. We know we're not the biggest brand in the world. But if you'll love to work with us, we'll love to work with you, and we think we could do some cool stuff. And I just seen that as just an opportunity to create and prove myself. It was funny because I told them at the end of our first meeting that, you give me an opportunity and we'll win shoe of the year. And we just got a lot of love on that first shoe. So, yeah.
How do the economics of a relationship like that work?
So one thing many people may not know about partnerships on that level is, like, pretty much you're like a vendor, like a store. I'll say freely, I wasn't offered a contract. I was just offered an opportunity. I was offered opportunity to be able to prove myself. And I think 5 collections in, to be able to know that each collection was, you got to prove it kind of thing, just shows me that, I've continued to work, continue to do a great job and help, transcend the brand with them.
It seems like they are great partners to you.
Yeah.
I imagine working at a more modestly sized company like Saucony, you have the upside of being the big fish, but perhaps the con of limited distribution. How do you think about growing the footprint of your releases? And do you feel a certain pressure to outdo yourself with each release?
Yeah, I do think that there's a pressure with each release, because I do think the weight of the brand sometimes feels like it's on each project. Like if a project doesn't go well, do people feel like it was a bubble? Do people feel like that's over now? Like, we're also working on different silhouettes that maybe, and I always say that each time I drop a shoe, that may be sometimes people's first version of that shoe that they own. So, you also testing the market and working on things that, you're hoping it holds up well, and you're hoping it feels good. And it's interesting because Saucony, we're having this moment where with these numbers and this budget and these amount of pairs and this allocation, we're still able to make such a big impact on people, because we're almost like really close to direct to consumer, because people are shopping and they're buying because they want it. And it's not just buying to flip or buying because they grew up with it. Like, they're buying because they're interested in it.
What comes first, the design or the marketing?
Marketing for me, because I've always story told that way. I've always was writing music because I wanted the music video to look this way. I always designed shoes because I wanted it to match a hat that I already designed, or outfit that I wanted to get, or I've seen people's aesthetic, and I've said I want to design a shoe that you would wear with this outfit. And of course, it doesn't get retold into the brand or the marketing of the shoe, but to me, the story has always been something that peeks out to me. Like, if anybody ever sees me in public and they see me just taking pictures of the most random thing in the world, like the couch to rug ratio or the way the lens glares off of something, it's my wheels turning. So, and I think that's when the marketing begins. It's like, how do you turn this into something else? I get creatively blocked pretty frequently, but I also, because I'm also pulling my creativity from a certain point in my life where I was just a kid with just some markers and coloring books and Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, that I also kind of go back to that place of comfort, whether it's my favorite food, like a video game, or just something just to be able to kind of like untie the knot. And I think then things will smooth over eventually, but you also got to understand that it's going to happen, and you just got to find ways to kind of wiggle through it.
Last season, I sat with Joe Freshgoods, who exists in a similar milieu as you with New Balance, and he talked about being presented with sort of a binary option of either having an upfront fee and basically no responsibility on the marketing or the sell-through, or having control over the marketing and basically most of the upfront fee moving into the marketing budget, but then being able to have more pairs at a higher margin to sell, and how his sort of thinking about that shifted during the course of his, partnership with them. Is that the kind of challenge that you have to contend with? And where do you net out on which side is sort of more to be preferred?
Some of the hurdles with like my Saucony stuff has been as they continue to grow as a brand, the product is is in high demand, and they still work with like an external sales team, so every store in the world wants unlimited amount of pairs, but it's that conflict of how big do we take things. Like we can go from a brand that collabs are like most brands, like it's not just Saucony. Most brands are splashes. Whenever you see there's only been 700 pairs, 1,000 pairs or something, it's just that's pretty much chalked up as marketing. That's not like a long global plan. So it's how long do you flirt with happy to be here, and do you want, like, how long do you tell the Footlockers of the world and the JDs and the Snipes and them that they can't get the J-Tip shoes, because it's like we're not blowing them up on that level when they want as many as they can get. So I do appreciate Saucony because they've helped keep the integrity of getting too big too fast when it comes to me, because it can come from a special thing to just something that's now you just see it everywhere and it's sell tags and stuff just because you blew up too quick. So that's been just the hard part. But when it comes to just like the way that we market everything, I've always been super developed when it comes to the way, like, we sit into a room and I already have the Pantones, I already have the fabric swatches on my computer in the most rugged Illustrator way, and somebody has to find me, match it up. But even that, like, I'll design a shoe with already to pop up in mind and things, and it's my journey with Saucony has just more been trying to get there. Like, could I create this shoe for ComplexCon next year? Could I create this shoe because I want to do a collaboration with Billionaire Boys Club and I wanted to release at the same time, and the colors are going to play off of this and it's going to play off of that. And so to me, it's just been us trying to meet each other in the middle.
You mentioned, sort of that balance between wanting to open up the volume, but also maintain the exclusivity and the desirability. How do you think about the aftermarket and sort of the data that the resale value gives you in terms of the overall success of the release?
The aftermarket is important because it's important to the consumer. It justifies why you were early to get it. It justifies why you were online. It justifies, what you're wearing today. Like, it's like, my shoes go for something. So it matters in that way. But to be honest, I give myself grace because I do think that aftermarket in Saucony is still something that, we got to get there. If you walk through New York City streets, LA right now, buy-sell trade is everywhere. It's as many buy-sell trade stores as coffee shops. And, you don't really see too much Saucony or even New Balance or things in there so much. So I do think that the aftermarket and retro running companies are still, that relationship is still forming.
So you're now 2 years into this relationship. You've had a string of very successful releases. It strikes me that you're, at some point in the near future, going to reach sort of a split in the path where you either become an executive at a Saucony, working culture marketing or overseeing some subdivision there, or taking your talents to South Beach and pursuing some other opportunities. If you were a gambling man, thinking about where you might be in 5 years, how do you see this playing out?
In 5 years, that's an interesting question, because I think where even I am now in my career, and it's not just a Saucony question. I think when things are hot and things are going well, I think all brands are faced with a decision where we're either going to invest or we're going to exploit. So I just think right now, I think that's a question that is up to the brand side. But I do think that in 5 years, I see myself being able to complete my full brand story. I feel like if people have been following me for a while, I've been telling that story of nostalgia, story of the Bronx, story of the Savior brand, story of me being a musician, story of me really getting my feet wet in almost like kid in a big city with just his backpack. But being able to be on an exec level or creative level, I look a lot at Virgil. I look a lot at Pharrell. I look a lot at what those musicians and those creatives were able to transcend everything. Just whether it was just design or it was product or it was just motivating the next generation to continue to do things. So I see that's where I want to be. I want to be in a space where you didn't even know you can get.
Tell me a little bit about the nature of the business. You mentioned your partners. How is the business structured?
Well, I say my partnerships are my partners, but like my day-to-day partners are my friends. I feel like everybody that people see me with all the time, they were also people that was, struggling with me at SOBs in the city or Santos Party House, just waiting for me to go on at 12 o'clock at night when everybody had to work the next day. But the way the business is set up is, I run my brand Savior Worldwide, and then my collaborations are mostly through J Tips because J Tips and Savior Worldwide sometimes are just, as you're a growing brand, sometimes people see what you do, but they just like, the brand, it doesn't have the same cachet. We're not owned by anybody other than myself. We just, we got a warehouse and a studio at the moment. The team is growing and just continuing to have fun as we go. A lot of sweat equity. Like we're still packing boxes and stuff ourselves.
You mentioned some of the challenges of entrepreneurship, and you obviously do this in a very scrappy way and do a lot of the labor yourself. Mm-hmm. If you had the opportunity to make one hire or one strategic partnership, what do you think would be the most transformative to the business?
A manager. I do a lot of the legwork. We've had people come in and been great help, been excellent help with a lot of things, but just sometimes managing me is part of the thing. Like managing the partnerships, managing the people around me. I think if someone can make me not be so pulled so thin, stretched so far, I think I would remind me of vacations and when to turn in some accounting information and stuff, then I think that would change the business, because I do think that I'm a believer that there's not a partnership that changes you. There's not a opportunity that changes you. The change happens within.
What was the hardest business decision that you've had to make that your customers, your fans, your audience are completely unaware of?
I was in a hat contract with a store called Hat Club, and the Yankees came knocking on their door for some approvals for a collaboration, and they were pretty much like, he has to get down and lay down. I was making Savior Yankee hats, which started a lot of my brand. I was going to lids, I was getting Savior put on the back of Yankee caps, and I was going to eBay, and during the pandemic, I was going to every single store that had a vibrant color hat, and I was just stamping Savior on it and doing things. And, it was like, all right, if he's transferring over to the legit side of this business, where now we're working directly with teams and leagues and all-star weekends and stuff like that, he needs to take all MLB product off of his site. So at that point, that probably was 90% of my business. Like we're talking about, I probably maybe was living and providing off myself just off embellishing hats that I was getting from the secondhand market, and you had to take it all down by Monday if you wanted to get to the next level. And it led to some tough times. I had to close my warehouse. I had to, pretty much lost everybody that was working for me. We was trying to build like a media company. We had to lose that. Having to tell people that the end of this month is the last month. And, it was tough because you knew it wasn't over. You just knew it was going to take some time. So that was hard. But, I still see the comments of people saying, when you going to drop a Yankee hat? When you going to drop a Mets hat? And stuff. And it's been 3 years, and, we're still trying to get, the team that lives in the same borough as me to see that J Tips, does some cool stuff.
What is the most challenging part of being a manager?
The most challenging part about being a manager is making everybody feel important. I think that's been something that whenever I meet or I run into Joe Freshgoods or I run into owners of stores or creative directors, that's the first thing I ask. I don't ask about how'd you get this partnership or how'd you get this watch. I say, how do you make people around you feel like important? How do you make them feel special? How do you remind them that, this work is not just your work, it's our work? And I just think just constantly reminding everybody and just wanting to, pour into them too, what they're into and be on their side. And you gotta show up for everybody. I think sometimes when you're in this position, you're not even showing up for yourself. You're showing up for the world. So just to pour into the people that make your life easier and continuing to be the right leader, it's tough work. I feel like I'm still learning that every day.
I've always said, with creative work, about 95% of it is not the fun part that people see. What is the part you like the least?
The part I like the least has to be when it no longer belongs to me. I think I'm by nature a hoarder. So I think when I'm designing, when I'm sitting on product or when we're getting boxes in, when you start to post about it, like it's almost like your secret's out. Like, you worked on something really special and now you get to post it. Like even like shoes, like I'm sitting in front of you and I'm looking back and it's like, oh, this is gonna come out before people see the next one. So it's like when the next one comes out, it's like, oh, it's not special no more. Now that belongs to you guys. So just letting go of things.
Which part is the most gratifying?
Just to see my kids being taken care of. I think that was the scariest part about having children. Just you never wanted them to be in the want. Like, you wanted them to be able to live a life where they're at least taken care of. Like any decisions that I make for my children is because of discipline and not because I can't. I just think that's been something I've just tried to really work really hard for, like just to make sure that I'm able to, not disappoint them. My best idea I've ever had was to get up and do things, to just stop living into the results and just realize that the success is coming from actually doing and just keep applying pressure. I doubt myself a lot, and I just think it's a part of the process, but you also just got to learn that when the doubt creeps into your mind, when it creeps into just how you feel about just your day-to-day, things to just kind of unplug and things to reset, recharge, just because, we are wired a certain type of way.
Being a creative and being an entrepreneur involves battling a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. What ideas or aspirations do you have right now that you're currently struggling with getting past the fear to engage with?
I think aspirations would be my own store. I think I'm very scared of like not being able to pay people on, and
It's real.
People got to be at work all the time. People got to be at work every day. So being able to make people feel the same way about the brand, but also hit that payroll every week and every other week, and I think that. But I think I've kind of seen every version of sacrifice to me when it came to what I was willing to stop doing. Like me and the same friends that people see me with at the ComplexCons and stuff, man. We've shared meals. We've shared hotel rooms. We've drove to meetings. Before brands are paying for flights, like we've put in the hours. So anything else is just me. I just haven't really got there yet.
If we were to sit down in a year from now, what will have happened for you to feel like this was a successful year?
I think what would have happened if I just I'm gonna hold myself to my usual standard, and did I do everything that I wanted to do, which is flush out projects 100%. At least you got to compromise something along the way, but is each project getting 85 to 95% of what it was intended to do? Whether it was just my intention or the right fit or hit the year in a certain way. But to be honest, man, if I'm honest with you, is solidify my footwear position with Saucony, or see what's next in my future. I think it's been a lot of sweat equity, like I've mentioned, but it's hard to live in a world where each project is based off of, or you have that pressure of like, if it doesn't go wrong, you wonder if you get another opportunity. I want to solidify my future. I want to be able to, let my kids know that, we'll be taken care of for a few years. And I think that I've done some solid work, and, that's what I'm most interested in right now.
I have heard through the grapevine that at ComplexCon last year, during the Sneaker of the Year panel, in a moment of protest, you exited the room after receiving the 10th slot on the lineup. What animated that decision, and where do you think you should have been on that list?
To me, and it's tough because I haven't spoke about this. I feel personally like sometimes the criteria for like the list, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't affect the work. I think I still wake up at work and it's not for those reasons. But, does this industry really want changed? Is there really, do you go off of seeing shoes on people's feet? Do you go off of like new ideas? Do you go off of believing in new creatives eventually? And to me, overall, I think to be at 10 when that, like, I probably had the most shoes on people's feet in the venue. And you doing first come, first serve pop-up. You doing heavy campaign, Saucony's biggest release ever. First ever Saucony collaborated of a children's shoe. Just as soon as you see 10, you just like, you already know what the rest of this list is going to be. And I just think that I'm not just fighting for me, I'm fighting for the next creator. Because if you can see that J Tips collaborated with his childhood brand, Billionaire Boys Club, at the same time that he also is one of the last creators that still will bring his shoes to ComplexCon and be in front of people and sign everything with a first come, first serve, and also meet everybody, shake everybody's hand. It's like, man, you how you look at them Wu-Tang Dunks and feel the same way you feel about my shoe. But it's, I respect those guys. I love those guys. Like, but nothing's going to be better than some of the nostalgia. But I do think that people are going to look back at some of my Saucony stuff and they're going to feel differently about it as the wheels keep turning. But, I'm open for that conversation with anybody.
What is the key to utilizing the chip on your shoulder to push yourself forward but not tip into bitterness?
I think it's a good mix to be able to let it fuel you and not let it break you down. I try to give that advice to other creators that I know that can't really turn heartbreak or can't really turn adversity into art. And it's like it's either one way or the other. It's literally you're gonna eat ice cream and watch Netflix, or you're gonna turn it into the greatest project of your life. And I'd rather be on that side of it than that side of it. So to me, it's my recipe is I don't tweet too much because I feel like that's just vent central. But I just let it pour oil into the art, and it irons itself out.
We've talked a lot about adversity, and you have often talked about those who fronted. At this point, many collaborations later, things seem to be going quite well.
Yeah.
Who is still fronting?
Who's still fronting? It's me. I think I'm my biggest hater at the moment. I think my friends tell me sometimes you gotta let a little bit it go. Like behind the scenes, we've bumped shoulders and we've talked with a lot of people that maybe I thought were fronting on me, but man, they big supporters, and their kids are wearing the shoes and they want hats and they just want to pick your brain and come by the house if you're ever around. Like, So maybe a little bit is like I got a little Michael Jordan in me where I'm fueling my own little fire, but one of my friends remind me like, bro, he never said that to you. He never. So I think at the moment it's probably me fronting just to kind of keep it going.
Cool. Well, Jay, thank you so much for the time and the wisdom and the candor.
Thank you, man.
It was really a great conversation.
I'm honored, man. I sat on my living room couch a long time, and I said, how hard I got to work to get on one of these with you? So, I'm honored.
Oh, man, I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.